Anne, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
We have chatted so much online, and we've actually got a chance to collaborate and do a bit of work together.
Yeah.
I think both of our values are very much in line. The safety, the priority of kids, the radical idea of, supporting our kids first with being at home and maybe just taking a pause on school when we need to. And I know we'll dive deep into this topic later. But I would say commonly what I'm working with is teens who are experiencing emotional-based school anxiety or avoidance or school breakdown. The terms we're constantly growing with the language around that to be neuroaffirming. But it's the most common thing. If I'm working with a teenager, it's what I see. I predominantly work with teens and families. And I would say it's a good chunk of the clients that I have now that are adults, some in their early 20s, but right up until 60. We're supporting them all around the same thing, around function. But today I'd love to dive deep into school. I'd love to dive deep into deep rest, regulation, and how we can offer some tips, tricks, and values to not just the families who we support, but actually to teachers. So, because I like your insight into this, into the background of like what it's like on the floor as a teacher, you have that actual experience. That's golden, particularly as an OT. Like we come in with our clinical language and we're like, this would be a fantastic intervention if you did A, B, C, and D. The reality is, you know what it's like on the floor and actually what would work and what wouldn't work. And that's golden. So we'll start with what got you into this space, this coaching space where you're actually supporting an incredible amount of family. The community you have is fab and you're doing great work. So
thank you so much.
What got you into this?
What got me into coaching? So I was a teacher for almost 20 years, and a few things kind of coincided at the same time. I was raising my children. Obviously, I have 3 children. My son had just started in primary school. We had always known that like our son had lots of sensory challenges, that he was, highly sensitive, that he was so different to his siblings. And when he started in primary school, when he went in among his peers, it became very obvious that he, needed extra support, and we needed to explore the possibility of neurodiversity. So, we went through the assessment process with him. At the same time, I was working in special ed in SET, and working with a lot of neurodivergent children as well. And I had been doing so for years before that, but I started to look at things much, much differently because I was working, I was meeting neurodiversity from 2 sides of the fence, because when you're in it with your teacher hat on, a lot of the time we're looking at targets and we're looking at school support plans and we're looking at ways to, help the child, ways to, if it's handwriting they're struggling with, we're going to help them with their handwriting. And if it's, that's fine motor. If it's gross motor, we're going to help them with their gross motor, their running, their jumping, their balance, their, vestibular input, all of that kind of stuff. But suddenly I'm looking at it with my parent hat on, and I have this huge emotional connection to it now. And I start to meet the parents that are coming into me for parent-teacher meetings, and I'm going, they're going, what do we do? What do we do? Like, somebody tell us what to do. And, I just wanted to tell them to trust themselves. That's what I really wanted to tell them. But at the same time, I wasn't really there yet myself either, personally, So I knew I wanted to do something else. And I've always been obsessed with human behavior. Always. Like, maybe consciously or unconsciously, from a very young age, I was always the person that would be saying, to my friends, I'd be saying, like, oh, why are you doing that? And what's that about? And, and so I decided, I looked at play therapy for a while, and the commitment seemed too big for where I was at with my family. And so at that time, so I decided, no, I feel like coaching is the way forward, because, I knew that coaching is a mindset work, and it's about, looking at things from a different perspective and maybe reframing certain thoughts and beliefs that we have. And so I went and I did my diploma in coaching. And the parent stuff didn't evolve for another little while after that. Concurrently, I'm going along with my own journey with my child. And I was sitting in a lot of like parent support groups at the time. autism support networks and things like that. And parents were coming in and they were just so lost in themselves. And I'd be sitting there and I'd be going, I can help these people. I know I can help them. And so then I went and did my certificate in parent coaching. And then that was when I officially set up Epiphany Coaching, and I took a break from teaching and, gave it a go. And I suppose I never thought that it would get to the stage where it's at now. But obviously it shows the great need for parents feeling lost within the system, feeling lost with, where to turn to next with their children. And most importantly, where to, how to start believing themselves and trusting themselves and drawing on the skills that they have themselves. Because we were brought up as, compliance was the goal. Compliance, the children who were seen and not heard, the children who were, you did what you were told. And so we people pleased, we fawned, and we looked outward for guidance and validation. And that does not serve us in our parenting at all. It really doesn't.
Yeah, I love that, even that kind of fawning piece, and we can kind of touch on that. It's often something that is not given the credit that it deserves, and it is a trauma response that we are that appeasing and that compliance and that I need to do as I'm told because we fear the disconnection or letting services down or letting GPs or schools or all of those.
It has given rise to a lot, and so many parents come to me and they say how do I have this meeting without falling out with the teacher, or I just want to keep in with the school, or I don't want, there's a belief around I don't want to get on the wrong side of the teacher in case they might take that out on my child. And that is not a thing. I don't believe that is. Well, certainly it wouldn't have been a thing when I was in my classroom. I would never have held it against a child if a parent came into me that was heightened or very emotional or angry or needed to let off steam. Once I started to see it from, like a dysregulation response rather than taking it personally or an attack, I could meet that with compassion then and sort of say, look, I hear that you're really upset here. I hear, we are talking about your most precious cargo. That was the phrase I used to use, like your most precious cargo. How can I help you? How can we make this better? I'm so sorry that he felt like that. I'm so sorry that she's not feeling safe in this moment. How can we help with that? And once I figured out that it was not, it was a dysregulation on the parent side. They were emotional. They were having a really hard time at home. Maybe they were sleep deprived. Maybe they felt unsupported by a partner. Maybe they had felt lonely, all of that. And they were just at their wits' end and they needed someone to come into and let it out to. Then I could meet it in a different way,
And that's a beautiful point that you made, and I think it's because of your experience, not only your lived experience as a parent and actually understanding what it might be like to go through all the hardship, but knowing that it is dysregulation or it is that the parents just needed to be held. Or I think for a lot of the times I would have this conversation with clinicians, we are the face of the service, or we are the face of, and they might be frustrated with the service or with the organization or with the company. So and we're working with families who are looking after a child 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if they're a neurodivergent home, they are really going through it and they need all the love, care, support that they can possibly get. And for me, working with a trauma-sensitive approach, a lot of the training that I would do with schools and a lot of the training that I would do with other clinicians as well is understanding that while we're supporting a young person who's been impacted by trauma or neurodiversity, that we are working with a family as a whole. And to do the work that we need to do to support a child, we are supporting all of the adults around them. It is never the individual. You cannot remove a child and do beautiful work and put them back into a space where they're dysregulated. If that's a dysregulated classroom or a dysregulated home, it's so we are supporting collectively parents as well as teachers.
Absolutely. It's like it's an umbrella approach and there's several agendas at play. There are, because at the end of the day, we are dealing with, as you say, you're working with the teen or the child in question, okay? But like there's the home environment, there's the school environment and all of the people in it. And we are working with human beings at the end of the day, all human beings, and every human being has, different responses. So be that trauma responses, be that, ego responses, be that nervous system responses, sensory responses,
strengths,
values, strengths,
all of those
things that have to be taken into account. So it's vital that everyone's agenda is looked at in the process, you know. And I really hear you on that, you know, that, you know, becoming trauma sensitive is not just trauma sensitive to the child, it's trauma sensitive to, I feel, everybody within the system.
We're all impacted by it. So can we support everybody? And we were talking before we pressed record, and we're talking about that child-centered approach as well. Yeah. And we all are coming in with an agenda, and we all want the best outcome, but often it's led by our outcomes or what we define as the best outcome. And we would see this within a clinic space. We have a thing called a multidisciplinary approach and then an interdisciplinary approach. Multidisciplinary approach has all of these professionals that are trying to support a person. Yeah. Often we have our own lens and we're trying to help them on one goal. Where we have an interdisciplinary approach, and the research reflects this, it's really successful. We have all of these clinicians, we're all talking, all professionals, teachers, parents, everyone is in a room together, and we're all advocating for one goal that we're supporting them on. So it's like, I can really offer insight into this part, I can really support this part, and I can really support this part. That's where we have real success with goals. Not all of us in separate rooms having conversations about a person, but actually the person's in the center, and we're all collectively saying, how can we allow this person to flourish? What do they need? How can my skill set support that? I'm actually really good at this. And that's where we see real growth with people.
Is the person in question in the room?
As much as possible, that a young person in the room. We can forget when we're all speaking about a young person to ask them what they want. And I've read so many papers on what's a child's experience. And one of the common sentences that they will often say is, nobody's listening to me. Why aren't anyone listening to what I want? And you said something beautiful before we recorded. And it was that piece of like, how do we get teachers and parents to maybe sit and say, what you need and want right now? Like, and there's so much power in that. And for me, the success that I have in my interventions is actually being child-led. Parents will come into me. I have a child coming into me. I will sit the parent and child down and saying, parents, I hear your goals. They're amazing, and let's work on them. But the reality is, it's the young person that is in front of me, and it's what's important to them. If they're saying, I don't want to go to school, we're not talking about school. If they don't say they don't care about cleaning the room, we're not cleaning their room. Yeah. I'm here to empower them. When they're empowered, we focus on their wellness, their well-being, increase movement.
You get in under those goals. Like, you get in under
their secondary will come. Yeah, so a child may not be ready to return to school, but if we push for that as a successful outcome, we'll be met with a failure. So it's supporting wellness. I know you are and I am. We're both of us are advocates for education. We are both loved that process. I am so grateful for it. Neither of us stop learning. We're reading. We're education is amazing. Like, I adore it. We want that opportunity for our young people to have all of those opportunities, but there's a cost, and we're so acutely aware that there's a line where it's just too expensive right now. It's just a cost that we cannot pay, because I have young teenagers who are cutting themselves in the morning to go to school, and then they come home and cut themselves. That cost is too expensive just to attend, and they're showing me their marks and their arms.
So that's attendance. That's not even education.
100%.
And if we came back to child-led for a moment, and this was something that we said before, as you say, before we hit record, was that, you know, child-led in theory, is one thing, but child-led in practice is completely different. So it becomes then, like I spoke before about different agendas at play, but a child-led agenda is the child's agenda first. And that is that's a relatively new concept, I guess. It could also be seen as a radical concept, because it requires the people in charge, be it the teachers, the SNAs, the clinicians, the parents, everybody working within the system, that they have to put the child in the centre and listen to hear and listen to understand to the child. So many parents come to me and they'll say, like, nobody believes me. But so many children are saying the same. So many children are saying the same, like they think I'm fine in school, but I'm not. My own children have said that to me on many an occasion. So, are we listening to the child? Are we having meetings with parents and teachers with the best of good intentions, with so much work put into that meeting before you go into it? But are we truly, are we including that child's agenda in that? Are we saying, let's make a plan to support that child with their maths, to support that child with their regulation, to support that child with their transition coming into school in the morning? But are we actually asking the child, what would help? What do you need? And that requires relinquishing a level of control. And and I know that control is something that makes us all feel very safe. The illusion of control makes us all feel very safe.
The illusion of control. Because I agree.
Isn't it? The illusion of control. Is it true control?
Because we think we have. And I would say that, I would even say that I worked in care for about 8 years with teenagers with what would be deemed, in quotation marks, challenging behaviour. But what they had was trauma responses and they had a communication, behaviour is telling us something and there's a need behind that. But I felt as adults around, we were trying to convince them that we had control, in quotation marks, and it was the illusion of control. We don't have control. We don't. We can do our best, and that's all we can bring to the table. But the direction that's going to go, we have no control. We've no control. We don't know the direction. We can just do our best to lead and hope and hold, and then allow that. So I love that.
Exactly. So it's like, come back to this. Illusion of control makes us feel safe. So relinquishing this control feels scary for teachers and educators. And teachers and educators, but historically, have been the experts, the people in authority, the people who knew. The parents came to them and said, "What will I do?" And when I started teaching 20 years ago, the teacher or the parent would come to me and say, "What will I do?" I wasn't even a parent myself at the time, and they were coming to me and asking me. I remember a parent asking me, "How do I get him to go to bed at night?" Expecting this authority figure, because that's what we were brought up with, this authority figure. But really, that's a belief that was held by society. That was a belief that was held historically. But the reality of that is that we're all just human beings doing our best in a situation. And so if we strip all of that back and listen to understand, listen to hear the child and believe the child when they say, "I don't feel safe, this is too hard, help me, I can't do this." That's where the success is. No plans, no homework policies, no, I know obviously there has to be school support plans, that's part of the status quo, but they're not the be all and end all. It's connecting with the child in front of you every single day. How are they showing up? Are they showing up anxious? Are they showing up, are they masking? Is there anything you'd like to share today? What would you like to do? I remember when kids used to come down to me in the support room, I would say to them, "What do you want to do today? This is my plan, but what are you thinking about this today?" And they would say, "Well, I don't want to do the first part. I'll try the second part. I'll try the third part." And I'd say, "Well, what do you want to do first?" "Well, I just want to bounce on the ball over here for a few minutes." "Okay, go for it. No problem." And then, "Do you think you're ready to start this second part now?" It's the letting them lead it part, so they feel, because there's so many uncontrollables in a child's life, that they've to meet all of these demands every day. Put your lunchbox away, take out your books, line up, sit down, go to the hall, go to this place, that place, whatever it is. And they're just constantly being compliant and meeting demands. Their autonomy is so, so little. And for a child whose nervous system feels so under threat a lot of the time, autonomy is essential for safety. Autonomy gives some control back, so it does, to a world that doesn't feel very safe. And a person who gives that autonomy immediately is a safe person to them. Not immediately, but certainly over time, they will start to trust that person. So I know that was something that worked really well for me. I would take my own agenda out of it. I would ask loads of questions, meet them with curiosity every single day. And that was another reason why I knew I wanted to be a coach as well. I was just so curious, all of the time. But meeting them with curiosity, that helped so much. I wasn't always that teacher, Padraig. I was the historical teacher when I started teaching first, but over time I learned what worked and what didn't work. And the less I took personally, the less I got defensive, the less my back went up, and the more I had space and perspective to meet children and parents with curiosity and compassion. And that worked so well for me in my latter years of teaching.
There's so much in that, so many different directions. I think the awareness, I would say awareness is the first intervention. That's where change comes.
We can't have the action without the awareness.
Yeah, we were learning. But for me, I can speak about my own lived experience within school. Being neurodivergent, I have ADHD, dyslexia. I come from a background of trauma. I came in as a very dysregulated young person. And there was an abundance of shame put upon me because of my inability to read and write and my inability to sit still and just being quite dysregulated.
You were the classic presentation of the ADHD boy.
Oh yeah, but without a diagnosis.
Bold.
And okay, that was back in in my 40s now, so that was back in
the 80s.
The 80s, yeah, back in the day, and then early 90s as well. Yeah. But the reality
that's my time in school as well, yeah.
And the reality for me is, I was looking to see who I was in the world, and adults around held up a mirror and showed me and how they met me. If they met me with kindness or softness, or a space to be curious. My concern is with a lot of neurodivergent young people who are in a school setting is it's a neurotypical setting.
It is.
And that's the part that's really hard for me to grasp. I was being judged off my ability to sit still, to listen to tasks and listen to things that I had zero interest in, and to read and write, and none of which I was able to do, I was capable of doing. So therefore I was being judged and assumed that I wasn't worthy, I wasn't capable. My self-esteem was on the floor. It took me years of working to realize I'm actually very skilled at doing loads of different things. There was a huge shift, and it took a while. But my worry is like trying to meet kids focusing on regulation first, focusing on autonomy. But that is so challenging for a teacher, because the reality for a teacher is they have 30 children with 30 different needs, 30 different learning abilities, and
30 different. Ask 30 times, what would you like to do today?
Absolutely.
What do you need?
30 different sensory profiles. Yes. So if we can meet the perfect need for one young person by them sitting in a classroom, another need isn't being met.
Yes.
If they're
focusing in on one child,
absolutely,
we can't focus in on.
So like from your lens, seeing things from this perspective, what do teachers... First and foremost, teachers need a big hug and being told that you're doing fucking incredible work.
Oh my God, that you're overloaded, you're overburdened, you're being given a new curriculum, you're expected to be an OT, a social worker, a mom, a nurse, a counsellor,
a bouncer,
a co-regulator, an expert in how many different subjects, like 10 different subjects on the curriculum. That's possibly wrong. Don't quote me on that, but I'm gone from teaching 2 years. But there's a new curriculum in place, and now they're expected to learn all of this, and like paperwork. It's too much.
It's too much.
It's too much.
So what do teachers need, do you think, like as they're sitting, because I hope that there's going to be some SNAs and teachers listening to this, rather than us adding more to their list, I suppose, like what do they need, do you feel from your perspective as a teacher, so that they can turn up to be the best versions of themselves for themselves, and therefore they can be the best version for the kids that you work with?
One thing, one thing that really stands out to me now, okay, and this is, outside of the teaching system now, is that like if teachers want to do any CPD on themselves, any support work around their own self-regulation, their own nervous system, their own understanding of their behaviours, they have to go and do that themselves. They have to pay for it. They have to do it in their own time. They have to do it over a summer. They have to do it at night time. Like there isn't much of that part of the teaching degree at all, or the teacher training at all. And I see that as a huge deficit. So I do. I see that as like when I was teaching, there was a company called Care Call, and we would get 6 sessions of counselling with them if we needed it. But again, the old belief there is like counselling is almost seen as like, oh, you want to be really struggling. There's a shame in that. There's negative connotations with that. So like, I believe that teachers need like weekly support. I believe they need like not a mentor in the academic sense, but they need a coach, a mentor, a support, a compassionate space to be held themselves weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, but they need somewhere that they can go to. I have a mentor coach. I have a supervisor coach that I can go to with something that's really bothering me, with something that I need to take outside of a session. I can go to them with that. I didn't have that in teaching, and I had 30 children sitting in front of me, 30 different nervous systems. I had parents coming into me. I was working within outside of my window of tolerance so much of the time. How many teachers are working outside of their window of tolerance and mightn't even know it? Coupled with the fact that they are going home to their own families, they have their own lives, their own, like personally and professionally, they are just overburdened, overwhelmed. I believe that like more support in terms of a space to talk, a space to thrash it out, a space to look inwards at themselves around their own self-regulation, their own beliefs, their own conditioning, their own values, all of those kind of things, an awareness of those. Like we cannot have the action without the awareness. So an awareness of all of that within ourselves brings new action.
I love that. And I think that's a beautiful point. And looking at the research of burnout, what they would say within burnout. What they would say within a burnout setting is we have like supervision and we have lots of different strategies that can be seen as helpful. Often external supervision is really beneficial to reduce the risk of burnout. Peer support is something that is needed. Like I don't know how teachers keep going. Like for me, I will do individual work with a young person for 1 hour on stuff that they want to do. So we are having the best crack, the lols, and something that's specifically interested to them, and then holding that space. When a teacher has to hold them for 6 hours among another 30 and then hold them doing tasks that they don't want to do, that must be incredibly taxing on themselves. It's even in a classroom of regulated young people, the complexity of looking after 30 people, children's needs.
Yes. Like the responsibility of that, you feel
the weight.
it.
And then you're like, okay, I'm holding them for 6 hours. I have to teach them. I have to be this person. And now I have to deal with the parents who I mightn't have met all their needs at. Like, I'm just like, oh my God, they need a massive hug in this space. So I agree. I think what we're not doing is looking at the severity of their role, as in, if we could pump more energy and support and resources into early education, like this is what society needs, but we don't hold the value. Teachers, in my opinion, teachers, SNAs are not getting paid enough. They're not getting enough resources for the work that they do. And they're not recognized for the work they do.
They're being given all of these, like, these are tools, these are strategies to help the children, but there's certainly from my experience within the system, and that's only 2 years ago since I've stepped outside of it, that like, there's no support for teachers. So these are all the tools and strategies to help the children, you know, and I know that there's a school of thought out there that people would say, well, the teachers are the adults. This is the gig, you know, this is what you signed up for. But that's not, that's so unfair. It's completely unfair to say that like everybody, no matter what career, no matter what avenue of life that you take, you need support as you go.
We are parents, and if somebody hit us with that line, you signed up for that. Yeah, we did, but we still need support. We are like we all
human beings with our own triggers, our own challenges. Like I remember, and this is being completely honest, that like certain children would have triggered me. And like, until I became curious with that, like, rather than looking at them as like, oh, he's a bold child or she's really cheeky or whatever it is, you know, which is the old way of looking at it. Okay, she's a madam, and I had to look at, well, what is coming up within me that is triggering this response in me? Why is this child like triggering that in me? And I started to do that through my own healing work, through my own journey, like that turned into me doing the coaching course. But like, not every teacher might have that awareness. Not every educator, SNA might have that awareness. And how would you have that awareness without going on your own healing journey and getting support yourself?
And I think you named it so well. I do think that when teachers maybe reach out for those 6 sessions, which seems ridiculous, like as
and then you can't go back to that person afterwards.
We have that in social care as well. Within TUSLA, if you were When I was working there, we had 6 sessions or 8 sessions. We were often met with extreme violence and like being attacked, sometimes getting the steering wheel grabbed off us when we were driving a car. Like, it was real serious incidents.
Okay.
And we were given like 6 to 8 sessions, but often they were trying to rush us through. I wonder, can we get this done in 2? I was like, what? Like,
what are we getting done?
Yeah. So, and then it's that push for the outcome of ticking a box.
That's the outcome.
And then I think for principals,
that's not you-centered then.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It becomes about them. But I think like it's about higher systems hearing this and saying, what do we need to support our teachers? Like having that model for principals to be like, okay, I need to put things in place. The best training that I delivered in schools is when I would meet a principal and they would say, we're going to do some trauma training. I was like, is it for a specific class? And they said, no, this is for every single person that's going to encounter a child, including the janitors are going to attend this, the teachers, the vice principal, to the trainee teachers. This is a school approach. For us to bring this level of awareness, we want the person who meets them at the front door to who's doing the garden to really deepen. So it was a cultural shift within the school. And I have delivered training in schools where it's just for the SNAs, and all the SNAs were like, I really wish the teachers could hear some of this talks about trauma. And the day I remember delivering one training with a school, it was for the SNAs, and the teachers were in doing training, but they were doing training on curriculum, and they were like, I spoke to them afterwards. They were like, I would much rather be upskilling in this.
Yes.
But that there's no shame around them seeking support. So I love the concept and that idea of allowing them to have a window where there's a coach, a mentor, a support, if that's based within the school setting, if it's outside the school setting, but that it's part of the culture of what we do as teachers.
But there's funding every year for every school, like funding from wherever, or that even if the school is fundraising themselves, because my goodness, my children's schools are constantly fundraising for this and that and the other, and I know it's brilliant, but like, why not fundraise for teacher support? Because like you said there, a cultural shift, and I love that, like a cultural shift in the whole school community, that like none of us are above each other, teachers, SNAs, principals, children, there's no superior beings here. There's no perfect people here. We are all human and messy. Is there some kind of a notion, like, I don't know how you feel about this, but is there some kind of a notion that like within society that when you come to adulthood, you know it all, and that you're, and the children look to the adults like that, and that they know everything.
I think they know it all.
Exactly.
Sat at the desk with a few of them.
Exactly. Yeah. That's it. Exactly. That like, I know it all. And that's that superiority complex, but that truly is ego-driven. Like
it's ego-driven. It's blind. Like I actually had this conversation with occupational therapists the other day, delivering the training. OTs are incredible. Like we are occupational therapists, which means we are therapists of occupations. Occupations is you living, doing anything. If you're drinking water, if you're handwriting in school, if you're going to the bathroom, if you're getting dressed, if you want to have friends, we are the therapists that support you around this. We are occupational scientists, so we understand the science around engaging in the world, the intrinsic motivation. We are incredible. We are still one lens, but when we go to MDT meetings, when you speak about internal trigger, because of my early childhood experience, this hierarchy stuff, I'm very triggered by it. So I don't hold any weight. I don't care if you're a professor or if you are a person who is just coming in making tea. We are people, and our value is in kindness, not in your academic background.
That's how you and I are so aligned, because I would be the exact same. Anything hierarchical really triggers me, and that comes from my childhood as well. So it does. If only, and I know that maybe we're being idealistic here, but like if people could start to develop an awareness around, the culture. I love what you said about the cultural shift, that like everybody is just, we're all here as a community within the school.
And where you don't see that is what I would see with the OTs is looking at, if you go to an MDT meeting and you will see often where different people will stand. So you will have the psychiatrist will sit, and then the nurse might stand beside them. Then the OT, we dictate our positioning in a table by nearly our self-worth. If you see where a professor will be in a university versus where a lecturer will be, whether you have a PhD or not, there's like a stance of what type of gown you're going to wear with a strip.
I know.
And for me, there's a real like, for me, the value in a human being is kindness, is love, is how they turn up, if they're present. I don't give a shit about the letters behind your name.
100%.
It's in that. So I do think we are in a culture where we tend to fear, and I think it's an Irish thing as well. I think we're like, oh my God, I can't challenge that. But I think we need to eradicate the egos, and say, like, what is the best outcome for our child? If we're
Comes
all
back to the child-led, letting go of our own agenda.
We all have one, and to be honest, we can all get there. But all we need to do is listen to the individual need of the child. And you mentioned it earlier, like about how all different responses we have. This is where it's difficult. And I was chatting with Dan. My therapeutic journey, if I meet two people with the exact same profile, if I meet two young girls, they were 15, they both had eating disorders, they were both Irish dancers, they both came from parents, they were both doctors, whatever, they both lived in the same housing estate, my journey to recovery with them is so different because they have their own individual sensory profile, their own individual intrinsic motivation, their own strengths, their own values, their own intrinsic beliefs of what their protective factors are.
Their own lived experience,
their own lived
traumas,
experience,
their own,
absolutely. Their own resilience. So that this is the reality. We can get to the end goal, but we need to let them lead it.
So looking on at the outside, the external stuff, as you say, like their background, their parenting, their socioeconomic backgrounds. Yes, it's there. It's a factor.
It's a factor.
But it's not that. It's the inward piece.
Absolutely.
And I think, and in order to connect to that inward piece, you as the clinician there have to believe the teen that's sitting in front of you. So just something that was coming up for me as I was listening to you there was that, like, when a parent comes into a teacher, okay, or when a child speaks to a teacher, all right, the biggest service that a teacher, an educator, principal can give to that parent or child is to believe them.
It you know, when you speak about coaching and that space of feeling heard and the power that's in that, and it's the asking and like just the space of feeling believed and heard is everything. It was really interesting. I don't know if you ever watched a documentary. It's called Bowling for Columbine, and it speaks about the shooting in Columbine.
Yeah.
Fab documentary.
What's your man's name? Yeah, I know.
Dan, do you know his name? Michael Moore.
Michael Moore.
So really fascinating documentary, but they were all anti-Marilyn Manson, and they were like, it's because of the music that he's listening to. And then they interviewed Marilyn Manson on it. And Michael Moore asked Marilyn Manson, this kind of very gothic, like cool music, said like, what would you say to the shooters? And he was like, I wouldn't say anything. I would listen to what they have to say because nobody was listening to them. Maybe they had lots to say and nobody opened up a space to hear if we sat and were quiet. And I was like, out of all of the people that were speaking, we went to Marilyn Manson to get the depth of psychology to be like, I wouldn't say anything, I'd listen.
And there's this is a completely other random story, but I remember being on the beach one day in Portmarnock a couple of years ago, and there was a mom and a kind of maybe a 3 or 4 year old little boy, and what I believe was the little boy's granddad, okay? And the little boy would run to the water and he would come back out again all upset and go, it's too cold, it's too cold. And the granddad would say to him, I watched this happen a few times, it's not cold, go on, you're grand. Like in that moment, that little boy, I know that seems so like superficial and, but like in that moment, that little boy wasn't believed. He was invalidated. Yeah. So he's like, I feel the water is cold, but my grown up who I believe knows everything is telling me it's not cold. So surely I'm wrong, So if a child has enough experiences of that, they're going to stop trusting themselves.
And they stop talking
and they stop talking and they shut down and they disconnect. And that's the opposite of what we want going forward in life. And so when a parent goes into a teacher in school and they say, my child is melting down at home, and even though there's no signs of that in school, I understand that, the remit of the teacher is inside in school, but there's a whole picture here. It's the umbrella approach of the child's journey through the morning at home, into school, their journey through the school day, and then back out the door to home in the evening. That's the journey of the child's day. That's their experience, their lived experience. And every part of it needs to be believed. Every part of it needs to be believed in order for true connection to happen, for true support to happen. And how is a teacher or a parent supposed to be able to look at that with the bigger lens if they are not supported and guided to be able to look at that by people who are trained, like clinicians like yourself, like coaches like myself? How are they supposed to do that? And that is a different type of training than here is all of the strategies to support a child with dyspraxia. Here's all of the strategies to support a child who's dysregulated. Here's co-regulation strategies. Listening to hear and understand, listening to connect, listening to hold space and believe the person in front of you is a whole different skill.
Are you given any training within, so a few things, I'm curious, are you giving any training in neurodiversity as part of your college course training with teaching? Is neurodiversity trauma?
I graduated in 2004.
Just a while ago.
That's a long time ago. So it wasn't a mention of it, not a mention of it. But like when I started teaching first, like there was no such thing like as an autistic child sitting in front of me in a mainstream school, even though I can guarantee you there was a ton of certainly children with ADHD. I remember my first class and looking back on them now, but there was none whatsoever. I know now from speaking to younger teachers and younger graduates that they get a module, which is about 6 to 8 weeks.
Because every
teaching placement should have a place in an autism class
or
a special school. At least one, 1 year should be devoted to special ed.
I agree. That's what I was curious. There's a shift inside England and they've pushed the movement now, but just to talk about mental health, like that there's a module around mental health for teachers because they are often the first point of call. And look, there's an awful lot of weight and it's not about adding more to the teachers, but it's about supporting them to fully deepen their awareness so that they have that bit more empathy towards the people they work for and more empathy towards themselves as well as they're going through it. So they understand that, oh God, this is actually what I'm doing. It's a huge uphill battle. And for me, seeing professionals in this space, they come in with this heart and I want to do the best. And often the most of their energy is in fighting against the systems. In other words, we don't have enough resources. We don't have, and they spend so much energy fighting. I spoke with OTs at the training there and it was really interesting to hear them speak. Because 50% of what they spoke about was, I don't know if we're going to have funding if we can't get energy to. I was like, why are you talking about the systems? Like, why are we so ingrained into the lack of? And it's because most of the energy and resources that they feel are fighting against that, not against the work that they want to do. So there are all the huge amount of passion and excitement to lean into this career, but actually much of that energy is dispersed in, can we get this? We don't have enough of this. And I'm like, oh, it's such a shame because if all of that energy could be placed in front of the young people that we work with, the outcomes that we'll have and the people that should be running it and doing it. And I'm not one to just have the pitchfork of like, fuck the systems and systems are all falling apart because I do feel it's great that there's advocates for it and arguing. Yes. But unfortunately, if we're waiting for things to change in systems, we will be waiting. What we have are young people in front of us who have needs. So let's just put
immediate needs. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And like, I suppose like in an ideal world, and again, teachers are so overburdened and overwhelmed with curriculum, like curriculum constraints, okay, that they're there to teach a curriculum, okay? And that's what teachers are trained to do, all right? And yet there's this whole other massive piece here around the children sitting in front of you that, like, in truth, before you teach a word of the curriculum, this is the piece that needs to be looked at: the regulation, the co-regulation, the connection, the trust, the safety. Like, really and truly, the month of September, the month of October, does there need to be any work at all? You know, like if I had it all over again in my classroom, and I remember I used to do parts of it, like, and this is going back 12, 13, 14 years. Like, I remember when a class used to come into me in September, like for September, our afternoons would be just play. they'd be just play, art, music would go on. They could sit with their friend. They could do puzzles. They could chat. Some of the girls used to knit, I remember. There was tons of stuff going on. Like, and I would go around and I'd try to chat to them and like, just like make them feel at ease. Does that make sense? That they would get to know me, rather than the teacher at the top of the room, that they would get to know me. Does that make sense? And I was always really conscious of like telling them little bits about myself and being like a human being to them. Yeah, exactly. And that's, you know, I just think that's the connection is where a child then, like Gabor Mate talks about the children being your disciples, you know, and I don't mean that in any kind of religious sense, but you know, like if you have connection with your child, the trust is so great there. The safety is so great there that they will just come with you. And I don't mean that in a people-pleasing, fawn way. I mean it in the way that like they trust you so much that it's like, okay, this is okay. I feel safe. Yeah, absolutely.
They're
no
not
problem.
doing it out of fear of compliance.
But they also feel safe to ask or to challenge the odd question or say, but why do we have to do this?
That's what I would want for like children, that they feel safe enough to challenge. And I think that's the difference when we're seeing a child that is very regulated at a school setting or at the appearance of regulation. In other words, compliance. Yes or no, sir, 3 bags full. When there's safety at home, they can express their wholehearted self and be dysregulated because they're met with their parents who aren't going anywhere and they know that. So I think there's a lot of weight in that. Just to talk about what you were saying there, allowing learning through play from a neuroscience perspective, like that creative, that exploring emotions, that sitting with knitting and play. Children are supposed to learn through that. When we speak about our fine and gross motor skills and our body awareness, our confidence, our ability to connect in relationships, it's play. It isn't academia. It isn't sitting. It's all of those. So what we're doing in that space, to hear you talk about like, September and October, we were just on the floor, like, let's do all of these things. You were giving them incredible skills, incredible learning, incredible safety, joy, autonomy. All of those things is what we want for young people to have, because they develop skills and confidence in that space. And confidence is really important, but confidence comes through knowing our bodies, knowing our capabilities. In other words, having an ability to win and be good at something. If we are repeatedly crap at something, we will get a low self-esteem and low self-worth. Allowing them to play, win.
Capable. It's the feeling
and that comes
capable.
through play. It comes through engagement. It comes through successes. It comes through winning. And school can be really hard for our neurodivergent young people who are motoring along, because they're often being scaled against things that are, I would say, in my situation, I was incapable of. Like, it wasn't that I wanted all of the adults.
You're incapable of being neurotypical, Padraig.
Absolutely.
That's what it is.
And there's no amount of consequences that's going to make me neurotypical. There's no amount of telling me. So the ability then of me, I actually wanted teachers to like me. I wanted to feel safe. But they were quite fond, but they didn't give a shit, because they were like, you're shit at school. Yeah. And so my turning point then was like, okay, I can be a messer in class because I can make the kids laugh.
The class, that's
and you see that commonly, particularly with our ADHD.
So you didn't have a success with your teachers, but you had success with your peers because you were the class clown.
They thought I was unreal.
Yeah.
So
actually, they were right.
They were right. They weren't wrong. They got it right.
They got it right.
But I think it's allowing that. So I love that, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like, homework really bothers me and like at the core, but I obviously I don't understand it from a teacher perspective and a curriculum perspective. But for me, what I want is, if school is an ability to have a positive identity, to connect with people, to understand routines and structures and systems, all of that. But I want them to have rest and a childhood when they leave school. And for me, homework bothers me an awful lot, because They've given the 6 hours, the 7 hours, whatever it takes for them to complete a full day, and now they should be themselves and play. But we're asking them to come home and bring work home, and I wonder what that message. We're telling
adults not to bring work home.
Absolutely, that's the message I'm curious about. It's like, if we're pushing this narrative for children, like, is it because we want them to then bring work home with them? It kind of confuses me. So I delivered training, and it was on school breakdowns, and a principal attended, and I could see the principal kind of nudging the social care worker that was there who organised the training, community worker, and she was nudging, saying like, can you tell him homework is really important? Because I was like, one of the parents said, oh, and they're like so wiped and there's nothing left, and they come home and like, should we be prioritizing homework? I was like, oh, 100% not.
Absolutely.
Like, you just prioritize rest. And they're like, oh, they're crashing out, they're
Decompression.
sleeping. Yeah. And they're like,
And
but what about
regulation
homework?
and
And then the
safety.
teacher was like, no, the principal was like, no, what about homework? I was like, I can hear what you're saying in the back. I'm wholeheartedly saying, like, scrap it. I was like, they just need rest. If they've done a full day, like, well done.
The department line, the party line, towing the party line is like for the people working within the system, is like, you know, the guidance on 3rd and 4th class homework is 40 minutes homework an evening. Okay. All right. But like,
Is that what it's supposed to be?
that's what it's supposed to be. There's certain like amounts of homework per, I think it's up to 5th and 6th class, like up to 60 minutes of homework an evening. Okay. And like, I say to parents now, okay, and I do believe there's a shift coming, and I know this from, say, my own children's schools and things like that. Like, there is a shift coming, but I say to parents now, homework is for home. So you get to decide. The child sitting in front of you, do they have capacity? Yes, they have capability to do their homework, but do they have capacity to do their homework on that any given evening? Is this evening a homework evening or not? You know, we do our best, and if you don't have the capacity for it on any given evening, you don't prioritize it. You know, homework is for home. So I would be like, I don't understand. And again, I remember being a teacher many years ago and, you know, being quite strict about homework and maybe being quite heavy on the homework when I didn't know better. And I do remember parents coming into me and going, you do give a lot of homework, you know? And like, again, I learned as I went on, like, what am I doing that for? Like, what is the point? And I would have the exact same thoughts as you on homework. But I also believe if parents are looking for a controllable, they do get to decide. And I fully believe as well that there is a shift coming in that, like, you know, teachers, schools are compelled to give a certain amount of homework for, you know, because they have to toe the party line. But like, if it's not done, I mean, is that the end of the world?
I know.
You know, I see it like with my own children, like it's, you know, like nobody is punished for not doing homework. And I would, like, again, a parent, like I advocate at the start of the year, I say I make it very clear at the start of the year, we do homework when we can. Okay. You know, we are a neurodivergent family. We do homework when we can, but I don't even believe it extends to just neurodivergent families. I believe it's a child and their capacity on any given evening. You know, I don't believe in the concept of taking work home with us. I believe work is for home, work is for work, and life is for living after that. And that's a value I live by. So I would like my children to live by that value as well, you know. And I would say to my children, like, is this a homework evening? What do you think? Involve them in it. And they would say, well, maybe I'll do my English. And, you know, okay, that's fine. You've showed up. That's fine. If you feel you can do that, that's, you know. So it's an agreement we come to. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's what I mean about the child-led part. I'm surrendering the control. It's uncomfortable, and it was very uncomfortable in the beginning. My God, I used to cringe at myself. But like, I was coming from my fear of letting standards slip, you know, not having boundaries, giving them the easy way out, all of these being too soft, all of these old beliefs and conditionings that we have, and they extend into school as well. If I relinquish the control, I'll relinquish my classroom management strategies. They'll all be going mad in front of me. Not the case. If I can speak to the class of children in front of me, what do we think about this, guys? What do we think about that, guys? What are you thinking? Like, can we do a poll on this? You know, let's do all of that kind of stuff. That's where you get the camaraderie. That's where you get the connection. That's where you get you know, people working as part of a team. Look, we're all in this together, guys. You know, that's like, I always believe in bringing them all along together. So you've got 30 people, but instead of dictating to them, we're all coming along together. We're bringing them all along together. That worked so well for me. And like, I taught classes of like 4th and 5th for so many years, 5th and 6th, 35 kids in the room. And like, those were strategies that worked. Do you know what I mean? That was the connection. And like I always knew that, like, the kids knew that I had boundaries, that like, this was okay in my classroom. This was not okay in my classroom. But I very much thought of us all as a team together. And I genuinely believe, you know, when I look back, I believe in my heart I did that, you know.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You must have a huge sense of pride over that.
Yeah, I do. And I really miss that now that I'm talking about it. Like, I miss working with kids so much. I loved nothing more than sitting down in the middle, not up at the top of the classroom. I loved sitting down in the middle of them. I used to always like bring my book or bring whatever it was and sit down on a table in the middle of the whole lot of them, and I just loved that. So I loved that.
I can see it.
Yeah. Like, I did. Yeah, I really did. I missed it.
For me, being part of that, I love it. Like both of us now, we're in a space where we're obviously working with parents, and I do still work with kids, but there's something about this part of the role that I never want to let go of, like the magic of what we see on the floor with kids. It's beautiful.
It is.
And I feel a sense of gratitude and just to be in this position. But I would, it'll come to a point where maybe it's solely parents that I'm working with or solely like organizations. But it'll be a sad day in many ways because
you don't get to work with the children.
It's great. They're great crack. And
so much crack. So much crack. And it brings out that playful side in me, and I'm sure it does with you as well.
Play, we kind of give up on this when we become adults, but when we're still engaging with kids, we still get to play guilt-free. Like I'm always messing and having the banter and having the crack, and I'm like, I love being still a kid messing around like this, and having kids ourselves allows that to happen. There's so much in that, and I know the work you do as well. I know we spoke a lot here about from a teacher perspective and supporting schools because it's really important. And when I work with parents, often they ask me, am I going to deliver some of this training in schools?
Yeah, parents would say that to me as well.
Oh, yeah.
Go into schools.
Yeah. I was like, if the school
would
can
have me
get, I will.
absolutely.
So it's not always as straightforward, but both of us are such advocates in this space. And it's not that the teachers don't want us. They're mad to hear, but it's just getting funding and getting all of those things organised
absolutely.
as well.
And also, you and I are up against, bigger organisations as well, but like that's why this conversation is so important, that like hopefully we'll be able to reach lots of teachers and SNAs through this conversation. And
then to name the parents then that we support every day, like what are the common things that you're seeing coming to the forefront? Because we touched on a lot of those intrinsic belief systems. I find the day I say to a parent that I think we need to pull school for now, I can see their heart is broken because there's a marker of I know things are really tough at home and they're really shit at home right now, but I'm still getting them in and I'm still getting through the day and I'm still surviving. And the idea of them letting go of that, it's actually, they've got this huge sense of shame to say like, oh God, I'm failing or I'm not doing what's right because I'm now pulling them from school. And that is the complete opposite of what I see. I'm like, oh no, we're just prioritizing you, we're prioritizing your child, we're just prioritizing you as a family. But it's so embedded into, from a system and belief perspective, like, I can't do this, I have to keep going. They to hear the words. Now, some parents who are in that position and their child is out of school, there's a sense of, they drop their shoulders and they're like, they feel validated and heard and finally have a space to say, Christ, I'm glad.
That was the best thing we ever did.
Absolutely. Yeah, but for others who are still in this position, what are the most common things that you're seeing, maybe coming from a parent perspective, coming to you, and how then are you best supporting them? And I know that's a very broad question because every single person will have an individual need. But
yes. So I suppose I do see a huge amount of parents coming to me that like, again, I suppose this huge disconnect between the school and themselves. A lot of the stuff we've spoken about, maybe they haven't felt heard, they haven't felt believed. Not necessarily that child-led approach where like there's loads of systems put in place, support systems put in place for the child, but it might not be what suits the child at all. And so we're still in this like circular discussion about, this didn't work. Okay, let's try something else. And really, when so many things are not working and the child is still so deeply unhappy, dysregulated, traumatized, that is the time where, what about just taking a break? And I also say as well, like sometimes, unfortunately, relationships do break down. Relationships between schools, parents, children do break down. Is this the correct environment for your child? Is this the correct environment? What about taking a step back, resetting, looking at things while you've stepped back? Is this the correct school for my child? Is this the correct setting? Is there somewhere else where my child will be happy? Do they need to spend some time at home at the moment? Again, it's just the curiosity of it, asking all of these questions. And what would it be like? What would it be like if your child was at home for a significant period of time? Well, I would feel like a failure. What's it like to feel like a failure? What defines failure? Those are the questions that I would be asking parents, and I suppose that's getting deep into it. But that is what I would be asking parents. And again, We go back and go back and go back. And it's like, well, failure means that you're a waster if you don't finish school. Failure means, and my father always said that, this is something my father always said, because he didn't get an education. He always said that education is the lightest load you'll ever carry. So like, that's what he used to always say to us. Like his dad made him finish primary school and didn't let him go to secondary school, and he had to take on the family farm, and he felt deeply that we needed to be educated because of that. So there was no other option for us, if that makes sense. But like, it always goes back and back and back to beliefs and values that maybe you were given or were imposed upon you as a child. And, really, how are those beliefs serving you in your current present? That like, it's not about your beliefs at all. It's actually about the child sitting in front of you. And one of the phrases and mantras that I give to parents all of the time is parent the child in front of you, not the, the amount of homework we should be doing for 5th class, not the, oh God, they have to do a junior cert. Oh God, if we can just push through and get them to a certain stage, then they'll be fine. No. What about the trauma and the damage and the dysregulation and just the awfulness that can happen between here and getting them through to the end? Like, that's not the goal we want, So I suppose it's parenting the child in front of you, like coming back out of the future, So many parents are in the future looking to so many human beings are in the future looking to the goal. It's why I call it the fearful future. Come back. You have to call yourself back out of the future, because worrying about them at 18 when they're 8, it's futile.
I think for me, and this is why we like connect so well, because everything you're saying, like, we're
like an echo chamber.
Absolutely.
Me too.
I'm like, I would everything, all of those is kind of bringing back those questions. First and foremost, I really love that idea or that concept of we parent the child that's in front of us, because we are like trying to get to the finish line, because we believe then if they reach this marker of success that this is, and we're forgetting that there's a child in front of us right now suffering. And so it is coming back to that. And it's holding space for parents. And I think what you said really well is the ability to have curiosity and ask questions of where these beliefs have come from and why they feel that. And what's on my side when I sit with parents is I say to them, I'm a clinical specialist occupational therapist. I have 2 undergraduate degrees and I have a master's. I stopped really going to school at 12.
I was about to say, wow. Yeah. You see, look at there's my conditioning. Wow.
And I finished up school, really, my attendance from 12 onwards was non-existent. I failed my junior cert and school was absolutely not for me. And I went off and I traveled the world and learned other skills, worked for a while, worked in real shit jobs that I absolutely hated. And that was a great motivator for me to kind of go, I probably need to go to college because actually I don't like this. I don't want to be a roof tiler in Ireland because it's pissing raining and I have to be I don't like any of this. So it helped me deepen my knowledge of myself, my needs, my wants, and find my own path. But so I think for teachers and for parents,
what's important now? So if I could just share this story with you, just around our own experience at home. This time last year, our son, who's autistic, was like in a crisis. It's the only way I can describe it, like saying like, I can't go to school. It's not safe. I just can't do it. None of the help is helping. And like, if I told you that like the team that were around him were giving him their all every single day. They really were. But he was like, they'd say to me then, no, he doesn't want to come out with me. Like he was totally shut down, totally gone into himself, just in pure survival mode. And when we got to the month of June, he just couldn't do it anymore. It was just pure burnout. He wasn't speaking, he wasn't eating, he was barely sleeping. That was when we just had to pull absolutely everything. And I remember saying to my husband, like, this is it now. This is the theory and practice. The 1st of September does not matter now anymore. It doesn't matter. Like, he just needs rest for whatever amount of time. That's just what he needs. Like, all education, school, everything needs to be taken out of the equation. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if he loses, and I say that in inverted commas, loses a year of school or loses whatever amount of time of school. We have to mind our little boy here. We have to mind him, mind his nervous system, mind him. Like, he just needed minding. Yeah. Just minding. And like, and I shared this on social media the other day, like we've started our journey with CAMS now. And like the psychiatrist said that to me the other day. She said, like, between now and when I see you again, she said, just mind him. And like, I was like, oh, believe me, I'll mind him, you know, like, but that's our theory with him now. Like, it doesn't matter what junior cert leaving, he's 9. Like, it doesn't matter what any of that
or
looks
other
like.
people's interpretations of what they think.
What are you going to do? The amount of people have said to me, what are you going to do?
Everyone will have an opinion.
I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what, like, I don't know what beyond today when I collect him at school looks like. I don't know every single day if the next day is a school day or not. But like, I have surrendered so much, and it has been an uncomfortable, messy human process. And I won't lie when I say that, but I feel like it's why I can support parents with it so much, because I am living every bar of it. So I am. And like, he is now in an autism class, and it's in theory, it's the perfect setting for him, but it is taking time and like awareness of himself, and him unmasking, and him like just letting go of his negative associations with school, and school equals survival mode. And he has said to me, school equals life or death, ma'am. That's what he has said to me. That was his association with school. And he had the most wonderful team around him. He now currently has the most wonderful team around him, but it was his trauma response to school. And so, like, if that's what this year needs to be about, we're letting it. And thankfully, we're working with an amazing teacher in SNA that are letting it as well. But it wouldn't even matter, I know it sounds bad, if they weren't on board. That's what we're doing. We're letting it be about him healing and recovering, and when he needs time out and rest. Like, he didn't go to school there for a week and a half because he just wasn't able for it. He rested every day. He had his little routine at home. Those are the things he needs right now. And that is scary. That is scary to do for people who are like, but sure, what's going to become of him if you let him off for 1 week? Sure, then he'll be asking for every week off. No, he's not. He's not. It's like, how's your energy today? Do you feel like you might be up to it today? Like, what are your thoughts on it today? No, I think I could do 2 hours today. Okay, that's great. We'll give it a go. And sure, the teacher will email me if you need to come home beforehand. That's the cooperation. That's the collaboration. He's involved in it. That's child-led. Like, his teacher asks him, what do you think? She emails me or my husband, and we go and get him. And that's the collaboration. That's true child-led. But that's been an uncomfortable, messy journey to get to for us.
And what I love is thanks for sharing that.
Yeah,
and
I hope it helps people.
Because I think people will see you as such an advocate in this space, and I want them to know that just us knowing theory, knowing the understanding, knowing the science behind it, it still doesn't make it easy. Like, these are still really uncomfortable, because all of these limited beliefs or these different systems, like, we intrinsically feel these as well. And I would always say when when adults and parents are coming into clinic, I have 2 hats. I have an OT hat and I have a father hat. And often the father will speak louder than the OT, because I know at times my daughter needs to fall and figure out how to get back up, but the father wants to be the hero, pick her up and hold her and rescue her. And sometimes she needs it, but other times she's got the skill set to get back up. And it's okay. For all of my knowledge, I still have that impulse to try to do the fatherly thing that sometimes I need to go, oh, maybe the science says this. So while we're sitting here with knowledge, we're sitting here with awareness, we are human beings, and this journey is as uncomfortable for us.
Messy and uncomfortable.
And because I think sometimes with these spaces, and that's why I like Unfiltered Connections was all around real people coming on, having real conversations. It isn't just about our lived experience and our story. It's like, here's what we're seeing in practice, here is our lived story, and here's what the research is saying. And collaboratively, it is a messy journey, and everyone has their individual path and what that looks like, but that there's hope. There's hope on the other side, and there is, because we're working both with loads of families at the moment who are in this messy, feeling unheard, and actually what we allow is a space to feel safe, to feel heard, to say this is messy and this is going to be really hard. Here are some things that can work.
And it's so interesting, like, and I say this for parents, for teachers, for SNAs, in terms of the parts that feel uncomfortable, the parts that feel triggering, the parts that make the job really hard. It's as much about our stuff and
100%.
What's going on for us. It is every bit as much about that and our beliefs and our conditionings and our unconscious bias and our discomfort as it is about the child sitting in front of you and their behaviours. So we're looking at their behaviours as communication, and that's fine. But if that communication is triggering me, Okay, so if that child is non-compliant and shouting and melting down, and that's triggering me and I'm uncomfortable within that, well then that part deserves as much looking at as the child that's melting down.
Because we're collectively a whole family as well. We are speaking about it from the child's led to have that success, but we have our needs as parents, as moms, as dads in this process. So we do have to take note of that. Like, are our needs getting met, and what does a successful, in quotation marks, parent look like? And how do we frame that for ourselves to be like, I've heard my child and I've sat with their needs and I'm doing my best, and I'm not always going to be my best turning up some days.
Yeah, and there's so much fear when it comes to parenting. You know, there's so much fear. There's, you know, the fear of the future, the fear of them, you know, the fear of them, their hearts being broken, the fear of them getting hurt, the fear of them being rejected. And when we're raising highly sensitive children, like, that's nearly inevitable. So it is, you know, and we want to protect them from all of that. And I completely understand that. And like what you said about your daughter, she has the skills to get up. So you have to sometimes step back. So it's the stepping back and surrendering. But so there's that part. But there's also, like, am I going to allow that fear to inform all of my actions as a parent? You know, like, and you have to do this because if you don't go to school, then you won't get an education and then you won't make something of yourself, which is the old type of language, okay? Or do I want to trust that, like, the opposite of fear is trust. I always say that. And, like, do I want to trust that, like, once I, you know, connect with my child, once they feel safe, once I believe my child when they're telling me what's going on for them, that they are going to have this foundation of nervous system safety within themselves. And with that, that's going to take them anywhere they need to go.
How did you become that comfortable in that space? Like, I know we still speak about the messiness and the stickiness, but there's such an awareness and a certainty in when you express this.
Yeah,
and
I believe it so deeply. Like,
I can hear it from you.
I was raised the exact opposite. You know, I grew up in a very Catholic, authoritarian household, a lot of trauma, and I say this to my sister an awful lot of the time, that, like, I knew it was wrong from a very early age. I just had this deep belief it was very, very wrong. And I always knew I wanted to be a different kind of mother. And it took me a long time to sort of get comfortable in my role as a mother. But really, I suppose the biggest turning point and the biggest epiphany for me was, like, my son. So I have, like, a daughter and then I have twin boys, and my son, like, you know, him being so different, him showing up so differently in this world, and me learning to trust him. That was the biggest part. Like, I have to trust that he knows his way in the world. Like, that he knows how to be in this world, and me trying to get him, and I say that in inverted commas, get him to be anything other than himself is virtually impossible. And I have to trust that in him. And, like, he shows me that every single day. He shows us that every single day. And because I started to learn to do that with him, and I needed so much support and so much healing and so much letting go, so much unlearning, to be able to be that mother to him. I'm able to do it with my other children now as well. And I trust my children so much. I trust them. I trust that they know what they need. I trust them when they tell me X, Y, and Z is happening for them. Do I always go, oh, there, poor baby, here's your load of cotton wool and I'll wrap you up in it? You know, I tell them you are safe and you are loved and you can do hard things. I believe in you, you know, like, I believe that they can do hard things. But at the same time, I'm very conscious of their window of tolerance. I'm very conscious of their capacity versus their capability on any given day. That's how I look at it now. And, like, you know, it's really interesting. Like, some people would say to me, like, you know, you have 3 neurodivergent children. How do you do it? Like, how do you do it? And I say, like, because all of these shifts within me, okay, our home and our household has never been happier, more regulated, more connected, just more chill.
Wow.
More chill. That's the only way I can describe it, you know.
It's the fight of trying to lean into systems that aren't functioning and pulling back.
I'm leaning heavily into my own gut, like what the mother that I want to be. That's what I'm leaning into now. The mother that I want to be. When I stopped being the mother that I should be, like when I stopped doing that and fell away from that, like so much changed for me, and people fell away, and friendships fell away, and you know, like there's a lot of grief in that. But I am truly living in alignment with my values now, and living, you know, as the mother that I want to be, the mother that I am, the person that I am, and I support parents with that every single day. You know, like really getting them to look at, you know, who do you really want to be? Like, you know, what's the mother that you really want to be? What's stopping you? What needs to happen in order for some of these beliefs to fall away? Yeah. You know, that's the work. That's the work.
And I think the same. And I think I think that there's probably a lot of undercurrent in the background of our stories that are probably quite similar. Yeah. But for me, I wanted to be the dad that I didn't have. I wanted to be the parent that wasn't there. And I'm not reflecting the story on you, but I knew from my own experience growing up, not being heard, not being seen, not feeling safe, not feeling loved, the impact that had. And then any bit of research that I have done on trauma, knowing the biggest component for a child to develop, to grow, to develop skills is safety. And how do I allow my daughter to know that she is wholeheartedly loved, that this is safe? And I always, no matter what she comes to the table with, that she can always come to me going, Dad, this happened, or I really want to talk to you about this, or I really feel really frightened. And that she's met with, that's so fucking hard. I'm so sorry that you've experienced that. And let's just like sit in that. And I would have done anything to have that as a child growing up. And I think there's that learning, there's that maybe that trauma response that I have had, that it's like I never want her to experience what I like went through, or that I never had. Like just love, like I love you and I'm here for you, and
unconditionally. And unconditionally means, so sometimes I have to put my beliefs aside, my old conditioning aside, things how I would like it to be. You know, how I would like it to be. I have to put that aside and be okay with how you're showing up. Yeah. You know? But I think another really important aspect of it for me has been that like I have like looked at and revisited and met little Anne on many's an occasion now, you know, and I consider myself, and I don't know if this is a radical woo thing or not, but I would say it to my clients as well, that like I have 4 children. I have my 3 children, but I have little Anne. I bring her everywhere with me because she needs to feel safe. She needs to feel loved. She needs to feel validated and heard. And she didn't. She never felt safe. And she never felt heard. She didn't really have anyone to trust. She didn't have anyone who bigged her up and was her biggest cheerleader. And I have got to be that for her, you know? And so I bring her with me everywhere. So I do. And that is like, that's deep work. You know, and I know that is deep work. And that has been a huge process over many years for me. But like it has been the making of me. It has been a game changer for me. It has helped me being the person that I am. It has helped me to connect more with the children that I worked with, the parents I worked with, and my own children most importantly. But I believe that work is almost, I believe this, that it almost needs to be compulsory for anybody working with children, so we can become trauma sensitive, that we can prevent trauma, that we can stop, because trauma is not just car accidents and plane crashes. Trauma is not what happens to you, it's what happens within you. A child could be locked in a bathroom in school and couldn't get the lock open for a couple of minutes, and that's a trauma. 100%.
And it's just knowing the little T's and the big T's and the difference between them. And I think for most of us that have fallen into this sector, we've become the adults that we may have needed when we were children. And 100%. And that's somebody had said that to me once. They were like, oh yeah, it kind of makes sense. They heard a little bit of my backstory and they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. You became the adult that you needed as a child. I was like,
and that's what I try to be.
That.
Yeah. That like, you're that adult for little Padraig. I'm that adult for little Anne now. But that piece is just as important as how we show up for, how you show up for your daughter, how I show up for my children, how you show up for the teens that come into your clinic, how I showed up for the children in my class or the children in set sitting in front of me. You know, that part is as important. And I believe that's being trauma sensitive.
And that's us, like when we're advocating that self-care, that is, and we're advocating people to engage in therapeutic process. It's because like if we have expectations for a child or a teen or to engage in therapy, I always ask the parents, how is your therapy? How is that going? Like, have you engaged in that? I will, and everything, even self-care. Have you eaten good food?
Pillars
have you
of
slept?
Health.
Have you done any of
exercise,
that?
food, sleep.
Have you done any of that? And they'll be like, I'll do that when they're 18. I'm like, don't wait until then. Have you played? Have you done anything that's meaningful for you?
That's so interesting you say that, because I was having this conversation with a friend at the weekend where, like, there's a real belief out there where, like, I'll get, and I say this in inverted commas, I'll get the child sorted or fixed first, and then I'll think about myself. You know, and parents say that to me an awful lot of the time. Like, I was just focusing on the child for a while, and then I said I'd come to you after that. And I say to them, no. The journey, it's two parallel journeys. It is not, you're not out in front of them, you're not behind them. You are going along beside, and you need every bit as much support as your child right now, because you're doing this for the first time as well.
Healing isn't I'll do it when, or I'll be healed when. It is collectively we're on this journey together.
Also, another really valid point is that we are the first generation of parents to parent like this.
Yeah.
The generation before us, which is our parents, which we're talking about, like you know, like a lot of people would say to me, like, I had wonderful parents, and it was no parents parented back in the 80s and 90s and before it with the level of awareness they had, their own lived experience, their own trauma responses. But we are the first generation of parents to parent through this compassionate, gentle, child-led,
trauma was never
trauma-aware, trauma-sensitive way.
Trauma.
Like, you go back 2 generations. Like, my grandfather remembered, like, driving cattle up the road to hide them from the black and tans. That's my grandfather. That's only 2 generations back. That's trauma. You go back another 2 generations and you're at the famine. So trauma. That's probably a conversation for another day. But that's a whole other podcast. But, like, you know, it's there's trauma in our DNA, and we are the first generation of parents to do this differently. And I don't think we're given enough credit for it.
I couldn't agree more. And this has been a beautiful conversation.
Padraig, it has been a beautiful conversation.
Thank you so much
for coming.
I know. And I was like, I knew when you were coming, I was like, oh no, we could go for 4 or 5 hours.
We could absolutely. We could sit here for the day. Yeah.
So we'll do more for sure. But thank you so much for coming. I hope that for the listeners, they have a space to be able to say, wow. And if they need to find you, how will they find you online? And
find me on Instagram. Epiphany Coaching is the best way to get to me currently. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And thank you so much.
Thank you, Padraig. Thank you so much.